Recording has started.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is 9:31 on March 27th, and I would like to call the board meeting of the Vermont Economic Development Authority, VAC, Vermont Small Business Development Corp., and Vermont 504 Corporation to order. Our first order of business is to ask if there's any public comment this morning.
This is the right time to introduce Nick.
We will
Okay.
introduce
Perfect.
Nick, yes.
Hearing none, we can keep moving right along on our agenda, and I will turn it over to Joan for her CEO report.
Thanks very much, Karen, and good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. It's been a long time since our last in person. Just want to first introduce Nick Grimley. He's Deputy Commissioner of Department of Economic Development and will be Lindsay's alternate
Periodically.
periodically,
I'm
and
taking
today.
about a half hour.
And today, for example, and Nick has been very involved with VEDA over the VC selections and the whole SSBCI, so it's familiar very much with VEDA. So just, do you want us to go around the room to introduce everybody else?
That would be great. Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, that'll be you first.
Tom Gallagher, nice to see you, Nick.
Good to see you, Tom.
Ted Foster from Middlebury.
Nice to meet you.
Andy Wood, Director of Ag Lending here.
Excuse me, Director of a Commercial Lending. Good to see you.
David Marvin, I'm from Butterman Mountain Farm, board member.
Oh, very nice. Nice meeting.
You know me.
Renee
Sam Buckley, Director of Energy in London.
Good to see you, Sarah.
Greenhouse, COO.
We knew that.
I'm
Well,
Kirsten Bourgeois with DFA, Dairy Farmers of America.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sandy Croft, Chief Lending Officer.
Safe to see you.
Sarah Furman, and in a week I'll be the Executive Director of Cedar.
Oh.
Steve Boyd, member.
I get to see.
Connie is responsible for organizing all of this and to, right?
Howard, and I'm a senior agricultural officer.
Nice to meet you.
And on the phone,
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm Karen Hale. You can't see me, but that's at some point we'll meet in person. I'm a board member, the current chair, and by day, I'm the CFO and COO at Union Bank.
Pleasure to meet you.
and we have some other VEDA staffers, Kim and Heidi.
Yeah,
and-
I can see they're muted. Kim and Denise are agricultural credit analysts, and Heidi Hook is our controller.
Nice to meet you.
Excellent, thanks. And welcome, Nick. Thank you for putting in.
Sure.
Just at the top of the agenda is sort of the reminder about our strategic planning offsite. We did change it this year. Instead of September, it'll be June 25th and 26th. It'll be in Stowe. Connie will be in touch in a month or so with more details about accommodations, et cetera. We've been working on a draft strategic plan, which was input into the board packet this month. And the idea is to give the board opportunity and time to digest it, think about formulating questions, comments, critiques, what have you, so that we could have a robust discussion at our meeting in June. I think in past years, strategic planning was more ideation and what should we do? I think this is going to be more about, we have the ideas, now it's just how do we put this into action. In June, we will also have budget, because that'll start soon. And the reason for the change was so that we would have a strategic plan for the next 3 years in place and a budget approved before the beginning of the next fiscal year, so that it was aligned. And if people have questions about it today, we didn't really put time on the calendar for it on the agenda, but I have talked to a few of you individually, and I welcome that opportunity between now and June. You'll see we have a similar format to past years, but it's really about adding. We're basically adding, we're getting involved in more. Vermont needs a lot more activity for economic prosperity, and feel very strongly that VEDA should play an important role in that. And what does that mean? It means blending to more. So hopefully, we're gonna have the ability to lend to multi-unit housing. We have to formulate another avenue, which would be VC-backed enterprise and how to lend to that risk profile entity. And there may be opportunities for VEDA to be involved in property redevelopment. Similar to the way an RDC gets involved in property redevelopment, but not all of those RDCs have capacity to do it, so we may get involved in that. So that's just those are really the largest changes that we have in the strategic plan, and I look forward to a great discussion. Speaking of housing and legislative update, it's been a very interesting session. At the beginning of the session, we presented our language for, getting permitted land to multi-unit housing, one that was acceptable to the HFA so that they didn't feel that we were encroaching on their territory. And we reached an agreement, and it resides in S328, which made the policy crossover, and I believe full Senate voted it out yesterday, and so now it has to work its way through House. I don't know if it starts in House Commerce or House General, but we'll watch that closely. The other was the back into VEDA statute, and that's in S323. That also made crossover. I believe that was voted out of full Senate yesterday, and that'll go to House Agricultural, and that is essentially that instead of being a separate entity is really just another segment of VEDA. So we don't have all these different meetings and all these different intercompany loans and, all the rest of it. The other thing that came to our attention that we participated in was this thing called CPACE. CPACE is Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Projects. And they first had VEDA in there as a administrator, which we were like, not really what we do. But we're interested in it as a concept. So if someone wants to do a clean energy project on a commercial or industrial property, the property gets assessed by the town, and that assessment travels with the property, whoever the owner is. And we thought that might be a great opportunity. There are about 30 states or so that have that legislation. There are some big players in the finance realm that participate, but Vermont being small, there might be smaller deals that, hey, VEDA could possibly play a role. As you know, we did get some funding for energy efficiency projects. This might be a great funding opportunity. So we did testify before Senate Natural and told them this is a great idea, but here's what we would change about on the statute. They had a couple of quirky things, and lo and behold, they accepted our changes. And I think that also is on its way, because I just got asked to participate in, I think it's called House Energy Committee next week. So hopefully it didn't change too much from the last time we looked at it, but we'll be looking at it. So again, these are all opportunities for VEDA to play a more of a role on the lending front. And so you'll know on the strategic planning, we're actually acting as if this passes, because as you'll see, we have a fair amount of goals for increased number of borrowers, so we expand our reach. As an example, we said, in the following year, we'll do 80 new borrower relationships. And we look back, and actually over the last 3 years, we're averaging about 70 new relationships. So we don't think it's, maybe a stretch, but with adding housing, VC, and possibly energy efficiency projects, it could be attainable. Housing, I'll just talk a little bit about housing. We touched on this a little bit. Next week, we'll be meeting with some of the housing developers and their bankers. They approached us and said, what role is VEDA going to play? And I said, well, we're talking about that right now. So we will meet with them next week and their bankers to figure out what role should VEDA play. Obviously, it'll be with the bank. It's just, what tweaks do we need to make to our policy to get that done? So we're looking forward to that. We've also heard about possibilities on infrastructure lending. Because of CHIP and the robust activity and interest in the CHIP, that's the Community Housing Infrastructure Program. And there are developers now that are interested in CHIP because they are footing the bill for the infrastructure, not the municipality. And in that case, we're like, all right, well, maybe we'll look at some of those transactions. So we do expect it'll be robust. I think Betsy has a fair amount of interest from municipalities, but many of those projects, the developers foot in the bill for infrastructure. So interesting times and a lot for us to learn and figure out. Yeah, just there's been a bit of a lull in the first quarter. Sorry, it's third quarter, first calendar quarter. But it has picked up. I know that we had a fair amount of closings in this past month. And so we are ahead of budget so far this year with 38 million in total financings and 105 transactions closed. We just we're finalizing our agreements with equity partners. I think Hula Fund was just closed last week and they just funded a new business. That's good, and we're working with the Rutland Group to close theirs. So, and you know, we've talked about this a little bit tangentially, and I think what we will do is bring that more to the core, that VEDA is involved in equity financing throughout VC partners. So we're going to make some changes in the annual report this year to make sure that we include that so that it's not forgotten about. On SBA, so just a bit of news. I don't know how much people have paid attention, but over the last several years, we have been behind the level of 504 activity in order to maintain our certified development corporation status with SBA. It's not for lack of trying, just you know, we haven't had a deal since 22. Right? So we just had an SBA assessment. They wanted to know what we're going to do to get into compliance, and we basically said we're probably going to voluntarily decertify. So there's a resolution in the packet that the board agrees with that approach. And it doesn't impact our ability to do community advantage. It doesn't impact our ability to work on other SBA programs. But rather than being not in compliance and not really knowing what the path would be to get in compliance, we're going to decertify. They said you could always come back to it. Basically, Granite State has this market pretty well covered, and most of the bank partners are referring to Granite State. So just wanted to cover
Can I
that.
ask a question?
Yeah.
So if you're not certified with that, does that mean the process changes if you do anything else with SBA?
No, it means we won't be able to be involved in a 504 as the CDC, which is the SBA representative. We might be able to as a primary lender, but not as the CDC. But we still are able to offer 7A guarantees under the Community Advantage Small Business Loan.
Like the manufacturing program. Yeah,
That's right.
all that work.
Yeah, those are all part of the 7A.
We started work with an AI advisor. You know, everyone's talking AI. Well, we want to make sure we understand it, can learn about it, and can experiment with it, but in a safe environment. So we started the process to figure out how do we do that. And there are changes. It's a very dynamic field. Just learned that Copilot, which is embedded with all of our software that we use at VEDA, has just made improvements, has adapted some of the Anthropic or the Claude capabilities, and that's good news because there's more context. So we're just embarking on it with the idea of, could we do a pilot project, do a compare contrast, figure out whether we should adopt it, or pivot back to what we normally do. So there are myriad uses for this, and we just want to be smart about it. Seamus Adsphere is a co-founder of Faraday, which is an AI company based in Vermont, and he's the chief technology officer, and he wants to help us. So we're happy to tap into that brain. We have a bunch of anniversaries. Heidi Hook, who's on the line with 10 years, and Katie Flint and Denise Straffolino and Eric Hall all celebrate anniversaries. That was recognized by U.S. Treasury as having a great SSBCI lending program, and as such led a webinar the other day with Sandy and Young to talk about how did Vermont, we're one of the leaders, basically. We deployed the money quickly, we got all our tranches, they're not in question in terms of the vagaries of the administration of pulling back funding, so very proud, and that did the work. So
Thank you, did the work in the webinar. So.
yeah, yeah. No, it was very good. And as you all know, Tony has resigned from the board. He's moving to Chicago. Sarah has a new job at Cedar, and we welcome you, and hopefully yeah, continue to be a great partner, of VEDA.
Quick question on that. Is it SBA required us to have three bank type representatives on board? What was?
Yes, for the 504, loan committee.
Required still.
That's right.
Right. Okay, that's a good thought, I feel. Yeah, I don't want to talk about Employee Appreciation Day, I bowled the worst, so that was.
I wasn't far behind you.
Oh, we had a great time, it was fun, and, we're gonna celebrate best places to work, early April, the event that goes on and on and on. But we'll be there and celebrating, but, yeah, and we're also gonna tap into interns and co-ops again this year, so. And hopefully nobody blew out a tire on the way up the street. Yeah, no joke. They're gonna start repairing it like this summer, so. Yeah, I think everything else is in the report. I don't really have anything new since the report was done. Yeah, any questions? Yeah, Kirsten.
I have a quick question. Has VEDA been asked to weigh in on Act 181?
We have not.
Okay,
Would you want us to?
What is that act?
so that is the act that was passed, that was last year's legislation that would create the tier one, 1A, 1B, 2, and 3, sort of development areas. And there are some folks in the rural part of Vermont that are saying, wait a second, you seemingly are putting more red tape on us and you're making it easier as usual to develop in
Yeah.
County, Rutland. No offense to any, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the quick
Yeah,
talking point.
and the governor knew that at the beginning, and that's why I think.
He vetoed it.
Vetoed it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, we could blend right into member report or, I don't know, Karen. Guess I technically have to hand that back over to you, but,
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, it seems like it's gonna kind of morph into that anyway, so we might as well continue the discussion and just keep rolling right into if any other board members would like to share as we keep going on this conversation.
How can you just, talk a little bit about Act 181 and, interesting thought, Kirsten, about, how VEDA might or might not weigh in, but, the whole idea, was to create a housing bill that would, spur housing in Vermont, juice the supply, so to speak. And what came out of it was Act 181, which was arguably a land use bill, and Governor Scott vetoed it. His veto was overridden. There are things in the bill that I'm not gonna lie, that we are, that we are pleased with because we got some of the things we wanted. Meaning there are some exemptions for, building housing right now in certain areas. The challenge with this bill is just what you brought up, is that right now what's happening as part of 1 Act 81, they directed the regional planning commissions to map the tiers. And not all of that's done, but as those maps are being wrapped up and submitted, it's becoming increasingly clear, which, as Joan mentioned, the governor knew, that some of the most rural parts of Vermont are going to, where we were intending to make permitting more predictable, it's actually strengthening the restrictions. So for example, you might have a lot of land that happens to land in this tier 3, and you want to build a shed on it. You might have to go through an Act 250 permit. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying you may. It's more likely.
Yeah.
So it did the opposite of what we wanted to do because we've been trying to bring the rural areas along. When we visit the rural areas around the state, again, we do, and again, I don't want to speak for the farmers in the room, but what we do here is folks are saying, I farm, I'd love to farm for a very long time, but sometimes I need to, construct a home on my land so the next generation can live here and help with the farming, or maybe I need to sell off a piece because, again, for whatever matter. And it's not just the farming, it's just people live in very rural parts of Vermont to begin with, and it's making it more difficult. So there was a rally the other day at the State House. There was a great turnout, and ultimately, one of the senators offered repeal of Act 2081. It didn't pass. It was like a 17-13 vote by party lines. Essentially, folks are flagging, hey, this is not what we bargained for, you know. So again, I'm admittedly leaning, you know, toward what the administration really wants here, but like I said, we are getting some things, there is development happening. It just, to your point, is happening in Chittenden County, and it's happening where there have been historic settlement patterns, and most of rural Vermont just don't have those downtown and village designations, I guess. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether that really helped or.
No, I think that's a great summary.
I got a question. So farmers have always been exempt from Act 250. Now requiring to be go through Act 250 review for building a house or building
You know,
employee housing.
I don't want to answer that question and get it wrong, but as I believe, yes, this would change the whole system. And so essentially, it's not like Act 250 goes away, but depending on where you are, if you're in a tier 1A, you're golden. You can fly right through with making sure you get your local permits, and if there's other, you know, A&R permits, but.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
But I understood it to be if I stopped farming and I had some, if I wasn't using the land for agriculture, but I had some land where I wanted to put up 6 houses.
Right.
Those 6 houses would have to go through a more stringent review because I'm in a tier 3 area. Has nothing to
maybe
do.
even one.
Or one, okay, 6 was my arbitrary.
Right?
In an 800-foot road.
Yeah, road.
That's the
That's
big
always
one,
been.
because it could be a road to a sugar house.
We want to do a subdivision, we had to go through Act 250.
Correct.
Yeah, and that, I think still, if you're subdividing, I think it's still, you know, you potentially.
So I didn't mean to take.
No,
us off,
I
but-
appreciated that clarity, so, it's crystal clear, as you can imagine. But essentially, what we've known and folks are starting to recognize is that instead of just making this whole thing more predictable, there may be some predictability happening, that's improvement, but the flexibility is not where people wanted to land, particularly, and when I say more rural, like, there's only so much that's gonna end up in this tier 1A that's like, you can, and even tier 1B, where you can kind of scoot right through. The majority of our land is in tier 2 or tier 3, so, anyway, I can look into that, Ted.
I mean,
I would add that it's also getting conflated with Act 59,
Yeah.
which makes it more complicated. And Act 59 is really about striving for 30% of Vermont to be conserved by 2030 and 50 by 50. But that is all voluntary. And so to have this kind of layered over that, people are really confused, and it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah.
I do feel like a useful note would be there is at least one bill that extends some of the deadlines from
Yeah.
Act 181, the tier 3 and the road rule would both get delayed, which are major concerns.
The 20,
Yeah, it doesn't repeal it, but it does delay the implementation, which was supposed to be July, so.
we have next session to find it again.
Right.
Might even be 2030.
Yeah.
One is 20, one is 20.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a good
yeah, I don't know if Peter wants to weigh in. What's saying the board? Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's like kind of the way of politics. They weren't gonna give in on something unless they got something else.
It's very reminiscent of when Act 250 first passed, because it included land use regulations and mapping that never happened. So that whole part of Act 250, 50 years later, it didn't happen. And so the idea of planning shouldn't really be a horrible thing. It's how it's implemented, and whether you involve all the community and get clear buy-in, that's what needs to happen. And it's so easy to become polarized rather than to work together today because of the leadership that we see exercised around the world.
It's interesting you say that. I think one of the statements I was making when testifying is like, we're not opposed to permitting, right? Like, we have this beautiful, beautiful state, but permitting should be the steering wheel, not the parking brake, right? It's like,
Yeah,
let's let it guide us, not
stop everything.
stop. So anyway, it's interesting hearing about, your
The
sort of
historical,
lived
yeah.
experience with Act 250 because,
So they never did it in the original
Yeah.
statute, so now for some reason we're gonna do it. Yeah,
It started with flooded housing,
yeah,
not too much.
that was the last time there was tremendous growth in the state,
That's just.
70s.
yeah,
Yeah,
Well, it was really, I mean, there was one seminal example in Dover. Where
yes.
so many homes were built on top of each other, and literally with sewage running downhill. I mean,
Yeah.
development was unchecked and
Yeah.
unregulated and needed to be
Yeah.
controlled.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was
Great
governed
conversation. Oh,
So
sorry.
say that, put it past the Republicans.
a very, very wonderful moderate Republican.
Yeah.
Put I-250 through as well as the first sales tax.
Wow, interesting. Karen, I think,
Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if there are any other board members want to provide an update and from their areas, other than this topic.
I would like to, instead of doing it during back,
yeah,
everything's so kind of down today, it seems like, and for good reasons too, like in the agricultural sector, with fuel oil so high, our cost of producing syrup went up 2 weeks ago, unpredictably, with planting coming and fertilizer being expensive, all of that. But yesterday, there was a story in the Boston Globe, and actually, I get it online, but it was above the fold, if you got the paper, about maple sugaring, and featured Tom and Cecile Brannon's family
Yeah.
in operation,
Yeah.
as well as the Baird Farm, Bonnie and Bob and Jenna and Jacob. And the focus of it was how the maple industry has become very adaptive and resilient in the face of climate change, and that there's also real interest in future generations coming into the business. And it just felt upbeat and a really great story instead of, oh, doom and gloom,
yeah,
we're gonna fall apart because of, I think climate change is real and it's a
Yeah.
problem, but we're doing okay. So
that's great.
I like that.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it to anyone if you want.
And they called it, Don't Fear the Maple Apocalypse or
Yeah.
something.
Great pictures in it too. It's a really well written
Yeah.
story. It really felt good.
That's great.
and you just had Maple Weekend, right? Like,
Right.
Bonnie,
Yeah,
yeah. I must say, Bonnie Baird, if you don't know her, she's a wonderful lady, but she was asked, and I think this might have been not in the article, but in a Facebook page, what do you like best about Maple Weekend? She said, when it's over. They get hundreds of people at their place, and it's a lot of work.
yeah.
But it's a signal of how, yeah, it really does make a difference.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Dave. We all need uplifting stories once in a while when it seems like there's a lot of doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the dairy side, we're still struggling with low milk prices and now doubling fertilizer prices, so the time we need to start planting is really putting kibosh on dairy, trying to get ahead of it and change. But the good side is we're still getting up to $2,000 for a baby calf, which is unheard of. But we'll take it. I was just talking to an organic farmer yesterday. He's in his 60s and he keeps wondering when he should retire. And then he told me organic dairy cows are getting $4,000 a cow. I said, today's the day. There are a few bright spots, but not intensely dairy industry, allowing people to get out.
I was gonna say sorry, Karen.
No, that's fine. I can't quite see everybody, so I couldn't see if anybody had their hand up, but so, is,
Well, I don't know, Lindsay or Nick, did you have any other updates that you want to
I
share?
don't know, do you think like opportunity zones or any of that would be helpful?
Yeah, I could give
Yeah,
it,
talk about that a little bit.
so I can give a quick update on opportunity zones. So in the one big beautiful bill, the opportunity zone program was made permanent, with some changes. There is some more stringent qualifications, so it's limiting the number of zones nationwide that will be eligible. There is a rural kicker to it, so the cost basis, when you roll a capital gain into an opportunity zone, it goes from 10 to 30%, the step up in basis. And then one of the things that we have seen here with the new eligibility requirements is that it doesn't look like we will have 25 zones that qualify, which the minimum that a state can have is 25. So we've been working with Senator Welch's office and the Treasury Department to find out, well, the law guarantees us 25. How do we get to 25 if we don't have 25 zones that are eligible? So we're trying to work through that.
Did the qualifications change with this?
Yes,
And so is it a good news that we don't have 25 zones, meaning there aren't that many poverty pockets?
I guess it depends on how you look at it. I think if you were to,
Yeah,
if you're on the ground in some of these areas,
Yeah.
it doesn't really seem like it's an improvement. But anyway, we are working with the senator and treasury to make sure that we get at least 25 zones as outlined in the.
is any other state in the same boat?
No, the closest is Wyoming, and they had exactly 25 that were eligible.
Are they census?
They are, yes, they are census tracts.
Yeah. What does it look like with Senator Welch and others, like? It's our hope, I mean, that's-
Yeah, actually, there've been some good conversations with Treasury already. The senator had a one-on-one with the Treasury Secretary. They did not get into specifics, but there was a general consensus that we need to find a way to get to.
How many do we have? How many do qualify?
So the initial information that was released showed we only had 21 eligible zones. Some new census data has since been released, and we're now, it looks like at 24. So, we're closer, but we want to make sure that we get to 25. As you know,
I'm with you.
this program nationwide was widely used to increase housing stock throughout the country. It was used, it was more, I don't know, efficient at creating housing than new market tax credits were.
Wow.
In the short period of time, it created more housing than in the 20 years of new market tax credits.
Did we see any success in Vermont with this?
So that's a great question. The first iteration of this legislation did not have any sort of tracking or reporting by the Treasury Department to the states. The new law says the Treasury has to report annually on what's happening in each of the census tracts. I think we internally at the state level are going to try and create some pathways for developers to self-report projects so that we can help inform them of other incentive programs that they might be able to utilize in conjunction with opportunity zones. But there have been, I don't know, 6 or 8 projects in Springfield that utilize the opportunity zone program. The Hula project utilized opportunity zone program, and they said that they wouldn't have been able to do it without it. So I think it has on the whole been a good program for the state.
Anecdotally, the Putnam block, which he is involved in,
Yeah.
this opportunity zone.
Exactly.
It's been
Good
good.
to bring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to take all the time, that was
No,
great.
no, that's good.
Another thing that I just wanted to mention, this will kind of fall into Nick too, but, we applied for, congressionally directed spending, basically earmark for helping with, some of the volatility around tariffs. And, we received through, which was great, we received the award through Senator Welch and, it's 250,000. And Nick's actually leading the charge to figure out how we will use that money to best help our businesses around the state that may be impacted, but I think like an important thing to mention here is like, I know many people that do import export work with a broker, so they probably feel like they have the support, but then there's maybe some smaller ones that might need a little help with like supply chain management or some other aspects around that volatility that hopefully we can provide some technical assistance on, but I don't know if you want to add anything there, but.
Yeah, I would just say that, you're looking at, providing technical assistance around supply chain diversification, around, financial technical assistance and, pricing strategies and making sure that businesses, have a better view into how their pricing might be affected by, changes in tariffs. We're looking into free trade zones and whether or not the establishment of either free trade zones or subzones would be of assistance for businesses throughout the state that are being affected by tariffs.
That's great. We should talk about maybe some borrowers that we know of that may need that, so, yeah, great.
Great. Thank you all for your comments. That's been a great discussion, but we'll get moving on with our agenda. We do have an ALCO committee report this morning, and I would ask Tom to give the board an update from our meeting this morning.
Thank you, Karen. I'll be pretty brief because you're gonna hear a lot of this in our next section, which is the board financial summary, but ALCO is the Asset Liability Committee. And it's myself chairing, Lindsay is on it, Steve, and then yourself, Karen. And we look at the balance sheet of the authority and then track changes that might impact that going forward. And probably the best kind of summary I can give you folks is the first sentence on our memo, and that's it continues to maintain a healthy balance sheet with strong capital and available liquidity. And we spent some time today talking about, again, just what's changed in the past quarter or so, and I think staff probably know this. We're tracking just a little bit below loan growth targets for the year. We talked a bit about in the banking industry, Karen shared that, we're seeing and kind of feeling the maybe lack of deal flow that what all bankers and I'm sure VEDA has experienced over the past 2 or 3 years, and whether that's, I think as Karen mentioned, just coming out of a hard winter, whether that's the uncertainty from an economic standpoint, who knows, but it certainly feels like things are a little more difficult. There's not as many deals out there that could possibly change with some of the housing initiatives, but again, we just noted that on our kind of our chart. The other area we spent some time talking about, which I think we'll talk about from a strategic standpoint in the future, is our net interest margin, how it's tied, our loan rates are tied very closely to our funding availability, and how do we account and price for risks, particularly going forward, and balance the mission of VEDA to be able to provide opportunity with still being able to be a strong, have a strong footing to make sure that we're here to provide that opportunity. So a lot of good discussion. I think we ended the meeting and I think Steve noted that we're pretty boring right now because everything is going very well and there's no issues, which is a really good place to be. So that's a really quick summary, and that will probably give you some detail as to the past month or quarter in the financial summary. But Steve, anything that you want to add to and Karen, unless there's anything you want to add, I'll let you go on with the agenda.
I don't have anything to add. That's a great summary, Tom. And I think, us going along in such a strong position, I'm okay with that being a little bit boring because the alternative creates a lot more work and anxiety for everyone involved. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Thad to give us an update or a summary of our financials.
Tom did such a good job, I can almost just pass along from there, so I appreciate that. Now, looking at the year to date, we're tracking ahead in overall income, so overall, we're doing great. We look at the pieces behind that, and like we mentioned, our interest income side of things is a little less than we'd hoped, but offset by quite a bit lower expenses overall, so we're happy with where we are. We're starting to get into the budget discussions for next year and figuring out what that's going to look at with volume. We get the concerns already that things may calm down a bit with everything going on, but I think we're happy where we are. We're ahead of budget on volume for the year, so new loans coming on have been strong. The overall portfolio is fallen off a bit with some payoffs that we knew were coming, so we're aware of that and working to keep growing, moving forward. So there's no, and our credit quality has stabilized and is still very strong historically. So overall, there's no major concerns we have. Like we said, we're gonna keep looking at our rates. We've done these discounted rates now for a couple of years, and we're seeing how those have impacted the overall results. And the SSBCI was critical to where we are now, being zero cost capital, but now that that's all been deployed, we're back to borrowing money for any significant growth. So with that comes paying 4.5% or so for borrowed funds versus zero. So that makes a big difference on how things shake out overall. But we have, as you'll see in the following resolutions, there is funding available if we can actually get it in-house. Sam and I were in our 30s when we started out the rest, I think, and you look at us now, it's been quite some time, but we're hopeful we can keep getting some of these sources available so we can pass on some low-cost loans, but it's tough out there right now to get more funding. But overall, we're satisfied with where we are for sure, and everybody's looking forward to the budget process as always. I don't know if that's true, but and the boring comment, yes, that's true to you all seeing it, but it is far less than boring under the surface than anything that we've got going on here. So but we're glad to be able to produce the good results that we have so far. I'll leave it at that unless there's questions.
Are you comfortable with the current concentration? Is there any area or programs that you feel are a little heavy or?
Yeah, we're definitely heavy in travel and tourism because that's been the major economic movement for the past 5 years, and we're aware of that, and we've put some guardrails on it, but not to the point where we're ready to shut it down. But I think dairy known has been a big concentration, but that's gotten much smaller over the years and has kind of been performing really well lately. So that lenders can talk to this too, but our real hiccups on the credit side have just been more isolated in different pockets of things, commercial related lately. So it's we're not worried about anything in particular. I think the lodging, if something big were to have an impact there, that's where our exposure is for sure, but.
And I see there's a diversification. Well, on the strategic plan that focuses on things like housing, manufacturing, energy, just to. We don't have travel and tourism in that category because we think that does come in, so we don't have to target it quite as much, so.
Yeah, I think it's normal for.
Yeah.
As a financial
Definitely.
institution to see
Yeah.
an increase in that. area.
Everybody.
When you look at your rates, when you take the concentration into account, somebody may keep a discounted rate for your loan as well.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thad. We have a few items, the next few items on our agenda, their financial documents and other things. as Thad presents them, we're gonna look to approve each item at the end of the presentation. So it might get a little crazy with motions and seconds and approvals, but for proper cadence and meeting minute documentation, that's the approach we're gonna take. So I'll turn it over to Thad for the first item, which is the USDA RESP financial documents.
Yeah, so RESP, as I just mentioned earlier, you've seen this a few times. It's been, I think, several years since we've been trying to pull this together, and for various reasons, mostly US government related, it has been slowed down, but we're back here again. We do have a set of final documents in hand and hoping to get those signed and executed as of April 1st, assuming you all are once again on board with it. So this program is, quickly for the new folks, is $10 million at 0% with a 20-year term. So on the face, it's as good a deal as you can get. However, there's some other things behind it. We do have to have collateral of 50% of the balance. So we've got a letter of credit lined up with Northfield Savings that provides that collateral without having to keep $5 million of investments or something on our balance sheet tied. So that was a good way to handle that at a small fee. So overall, the cost of these funds is less than 1%. And we've got some backfill of projects that we've done post the original approval that we'll be ready to look at funding with those. So we essentially refinance our own money, and it's clear to the customer doesn't really see that process, and except for their rate being impacted. But so we're hopeful to pull a couple of those together and really start using this funding and submit the next application. So maybe by 2030, we'll get another. That's optimistic. Allocation. Smoother the second time, we're told. So, yeah, so this will be great for us to get. The next in line, and stop me if there's questions on any of these. I think they're all pretty straightforward, but the TD Bank maturity.
Oh, Thad, can we stop and get this moved and approved? We're gonna
Oh, I
approve
thought
each
we were
one.
doing them all at the end. Sorry.
No, I think that's what we originally thought, but then I received some revised notes that we're gonna take an approval on each one. So would somebody like to move the USDA rep financial documents?
This is Tom, I'll move.
Thank you, Tom.
And Ted seconded.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have approved the USDA RESP financial documents. Okay.
All right.
TD Bank maturity extension.
Next up, TD Bank. We have TD Bank as our primary source of funds for our term loans, so and a line of credit, but we have a series of term funding that goes out 3 to 5 years to balance out our fixed rate loan portfolio, and we're up with a maturity, it was in February originally, but of $40 million that we're pushing out another 3 years, and along with that, we're modifying the rate on another $50 million note for the remaining maturity, which has 2 years left. So trying to do a couple things at once here and renew our existing line of credit. So all of this is beneficial to us. We're gonna get some rate relief. If it would have happened when it was scheduled to, it would have been even more, but unfortunately, things got delayed and rates have gone up a bit since, but it's still in our favor and will save us at least a couple $100,000 a year in interest costs. So it's a good move, and once we do this, we won't have to touch things with TD for a couple of years unless we're bringing new borrowings to the table. So it's nice to do these in bunches because it all has to get the whole conglomerate involved, with JP Morgan's approval and attorneys on all sides. It's expensive and time consuming. So that's TD, no new money, just getting better terms and extending maturity on what we have.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
Oh, Ted?
Is there any early out for you on this one?
No, good point. No, there are no prepayment penalties on all of these. There's the option to get a slightly lower rate if you lock in with no ability to prepay, but historically that's put us at a disadvantage at times in the past when rates have really dropped quickly. So it's nice to have that ability. So we're able to prepay these. Good question.
Aaron, I'll move this.
Thanks, Ted.
I'll-
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank
Uh,
you.
And Sarah seconded.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We have approved the TD Bank maturity extension. Vermont 504 management agreement, FAD.
So because we have these different entities set up for 504 Corp., which we talked about earlier as unwinding that particular program, but the entity's still here and operates with the other SBA 7A program. And since this doesn't have employees of its own, this entity, there has to be some mechanism to pass costs back and forth. So there's a management agreement with all of our entities and VEDA. So this just lays out, it's a renewal of what's been in place for years. And this just kicks out another 5 years and lays out the methodology of which VEDA's staff underwrites, approves, and services loans for Vermont 504. Nothing new and exciting here, just a continuation.
Okay, would someone like to,
Sarah made a motion.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Kirsten, was it Kirsten? Am I getting good at voices even?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have approved the Vermont 504 management agreement. 504 resolution, bad. I think.
What I've got is the IRP next, unless I skipped something.
I don't,
It's just.
Okay, so the resolution is just, yeah, the continuation of the prior, so we'll have this resolution signed of what you just approved.
oh,
for the-
okay,
For the management.
sorry
agreement.
about that.
No.
The one for Jennifer's signature, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah.
That, okay.
Yeah, so that follows the. So I'm on item K now, so
Oh,
both of our small business entities, 504 Corp. And the Vermont Small Business Development Corporation, each have access to USDA IRP funding, and this has always been a really good source for us. It's 1% money for 30 years. And we take as much as we can get. And the last couple of years, allocations have been either unavailable or delayed with shutdown, staffing issues, other things. So we had active applications out that did not get funded. So we are just resubmitting our next round of applications, $1 million each for those two entities. And no clue about how these will land, but we'll apply anytime we can, just because it is such a good source. And we've got, as the table lays out how we've used this in the past, we have $11 million in these borrowings right now. So at 1%, that's a significant savings for us to have them. So we're hopeful that they will approve funding. The announcement has not happened yet, but this will at least put us in the queue for when that does get resolved.
okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Steve will.
Thank you,
Second.
Steve. Peter, was that Peter?
Yeah.
Oh.
Good job.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We have approved the IRP borrowing resolution. Now I believe if I'm in the right spot on the agenda, we're at the Vermont 504 decertification resolution. I think Joan's gonna
Yes,
take it.
that's correct. That is, as I mentioned in the CEO report, we're gonna decertify voluntarily, and we need a board resolution that we will instruct them, and we're gonna go through a process to decertify and transition any outstandings to another 504. Okay, Ted is moving the resolution.
Okay, is there a second?
Sarah seconded.
Thank you, Sarah. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We have approved the decertification resolution. Phew, okay, we got through those. Good job, everybody. Okay, we are up to the consent agenda, and on this consent agenda, we have one item for approval, and that would be the minutes of our December 19th, 2025 board meeting. And then we have a list of informational items. Is there anything on the informational items that anyone would like to pull out and discuss separately?
Ted, I'd like to comment on M8, just a comment, not a question. Dealing with Twitchell Hill Farm LLC, Sugar Tree.
Yeah.
I was just out there yesterday as a lister in town of Haven, and probably moved around really slowly. And the problem is the contractor she has overextends himself all the time and never meets deadlines. So I would expect she'd come back again with another request for extension.
May I comment?
Yeah.
Okay, so I met with Sue last week, or this week, sorry, this week, and we went over the numbers. Oh, we're not in executive session, sorry. Oh, so, what we'll do is we'll be going to executive session to discuss the other, we'll discuss it. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. So we'll take this up in executive session. Are there any other items? Hearing none, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Steve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we have approved the consent agenda. I would now like to take a motion to go into executive session to consider third-party confidential and contractual matters, premature public knowledge of which would clearly place VEDA, VSB, DC, VAC, and Vermont 504 or individuals at substantial disadvantage and invite VEDA staff to join this meeting. Would somebody make that motion?
Sarah.
Second.
Is there? Thank you.
Peter.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now enter executive session.